But I thought it was interesting, and I told the staff I'll take responsibility for it, so keep working on it. This is possible because we are an independent company. It is worth remembering yet again that the reason why Pocket Pair is able to do any of this work is because of the independent wealth that Mizobi has brought along from his work in web services and also from his work in the financial sector. Mizobi has also mentioned how the kernel of the idea of the pals in Palworld started in Craftopia, and they ended up just fleshing that out and developing it further. It's clear from the comments on our first video on Palworld that the gaming community is somewhat conflicted about how we feel as a whole about Palworld. This is something that is well worth bearing in mind if you are a game developer, although you do also have to bear in mind that not all of that attention is necessarily positive, as the ongoing discourse surrounding Palworld shows. At the same time, something tells me that Mizobi is not losing sleep over the negative comments while he sleeps on his giant pile of money. But we'll put all of that to one side for the moment. Ultimately, without wanting to colour things too far one way or the other on this, the moral of this story is simply that the mashup formula that Pocket Pair has applied works like a charm. It has certainly achieved the objective of getting as much attention as possible. If there are good ideas in the world, I pick them up, and I don't necessarily have to be particular about originality. These are the words of Takuro Mizobi, the founder of Pocket Pair, the developers behind Palworld. In the past week, the studio has garnered a lot of attention for A, making one of the most widely popular games on Steam and Xbox Game Pass of, well, all time, and B, shall we say, wearing their inspiration on their sleeves. In a recent video, I explained how Palworld just about passes the squint test and circumvents intellectual property law so that it's safe from the Pokemon Company and Nintendo from a legal perspective, largely because in addition to borrowing a lot from Pokemon games, it also borrows concepts from Ark Survival Evolved. This allows it to be just distinct enough to avoid infringing copyright, even as it borrows and remixes large chunks of Pokemon character design. Perhaps the bigger question though is why? Mizobi is fairly complimentary of the Nintendo approach to developing games, but at the same time has said that it is not for him, specifically because of the amount of work that Nintendo puts in to making original concepts that are unlike anything else that are on the market. He said, "When it comes to making games, Nintendo has a strong philosophy of creating new and unique games with high quality, and this was questioned at the Nintendo Game Seminar. On the other hand, I have a deep-rooted desire for my work to be enjoyed by as many people as possible. And to that end, if there are good ideas in the world, I pick them up, and I don't necessarily have to be particular about originality. I think it would be a good idea to create things in a way that just jumps on what is trendy." Now, as said, I'm going to keep my own personal opinions to myself on this, beyond simply reiterating that I feel that intellectual property law just does not suit video games as it currently exists. But beyond that, it is interesting to see this mashup formula, which is very popular in other forms of creative entertainment, applied so strongly in the video game sphere. As mentioned, I've entirely ignored for the moment the large, very uncomfortable elephant in the room, which is Pocket Pair's use of AI for art generation in games in the past, and indeed probably in Palworld. I think at a later date we'll potentially have a video on how AI can influence game development and how it's potentially influenced Palworld, but at the same time how there are limitations to what can be achieved with current AI technology regarding the kind of resources and the assets that you need to put into a video game. Craftopia serves very much as the template for Palworld, and a lot of the ideas from Craftopia migrated over to Palworld during the development of that game. Craftopia can be seen very much as the mashup between Ark Survival Evolved and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And if you think I'm being reductive by describing it that way, that is exactly how Mizobi describes it. He said, "I referenced The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild as a base, and added as many elements as I thought were interesting, such as crafting elements from Minecraft and animal husbandry elements from dinosaur survival action game Ark Survival Evolved. Naturally, there were a lot of bugs, and the game would fail. Why does Pocket Pair take this particular game design approach, the mashup approach of taking various different ideas from different games and smushing them together in such a way that, while not necessarily particularly original or unique, makes something that is distinct enough to be considered its own game?" To use the phrase mashup does feel appropriate because that is exactly how Pocket Pair's founder, Teruko Mizobi, describes the studio's creative process. In an absolutely fascinating interview with Wired from 2022, Mizobi explained that the studio borrows so heavily from other existing popular titles because making original games is very difficult. So as he moved from web services over to game design, Mizobi brought this mashup mentality with him, and he applied it to the studio's first major game, Over Dungeon, to limited success. He said, "Over Dungeon was developed because I thought it would be an interesting idea to combine two card games, Slay the Spire and Clash Royale. However, when I actually tried it, I found that I couldn't get the balance right, and it was much more difficult to integrate the games than I had expected. On the other hand, I also discovered that by imitating multiple works, you can create something unique.